Hello, and welcome to another episode of Video Store Rejects. This is a podcast where we discuss our favorite directors and their filmographies and our favorite film franchises. We are coming to a close on our two series with the fantastical world of Guillermo del Toro and the whimsical world of Wes Anderson. Tonight we are back in the whimsical of Wes Anderson, and Aaron Lowe has returned to the show, and this time we're talking the Grand Budapest Hotel. Welcome back, Aaron.
Thank you for having me again, Cody.
Of course, always a pleasure. Glad to have you. Glad you were excited to be a part of both of these series.
Oh, yes.
So we were talking a little bit before we started recording. You had mentioned you do like Wes Anderson, but you've only seen a handful of his movies, but sounds like you like what you've seen so far.
I definitely have. Yes, I am not as well versed in my Wes Anderson filmography lore as I am with some of the other series that we have covered. But the films that I have seen from him have all just left me feeling, just left a wonderful feeling inside of me. And yeah, his style of shooting and his cinematography style, I just love it. His many of his sets are just very eye catching, and there's always so much going on in the background. You just got to pay attention to it. So yes, it is a director that I am anxious to explore more of his filmography.
And you should, because I feel like, to me, he's a director that if you like, I always find it odd when there are people that give some of his films a bad review, and I have yet to see The French Dispatch, so I can't say anything on that one yet. But of his 9 previous films, I feel like you either like these movies or you don't. I don't quite get where some people are like, "Well, I like this one, but I don't like that one." I feel like you're either on board or you're not.
He definitely has a unique style from the movies of his I have seen, and even though he has a unique style, though, every single one of these stories is very different from the last one. And I think there's enough variety that makes every single one of his movies exciting. And especially you have more innocent stories like Moonrise Kingdom, very much like a coming of age, growing up. Then you've got something a little bit more on the adult side, like Grand Budapest Hotel. And while these films were made by the same director, tonally they're very different, but there is that underlying just aspect that makes it very distinctly Wes Anderson.
Very much so. I think you can spot a Wes Anderson film just by looking at it. Like, oh, yep, that's Wes Anderson. So, what do you love about this movie particularly?
So with this one, I really enjoy the characters a lot in this film because there's such a just a wide variety of different personalities all meshing around together in this. I like the story as well. It's a lot of fun. It's part heist, part romance, part on the run, and yeah, just a lot of just the set pieces they use in the locations they shot in. The music is fantastic. There's just so much good in this movie that just all the elements when you put them together make it a fantastic cinematic experience.
I totally agree. I think it's not my personal favorite film of Wes's, but I think this is Wes at his absolute best as a filmmaker. Like, I think this is him at the top of his game. Like, he's at his absolute best. He's firing on all cylinders, and this is just a well-crafted film from beginning to end, with not just the story, not just the acting, but the production design. And I don't know if you noticed while you were watching tonight, but did you notice how the film ratio changed when we went to different time eras? Because it's in widescreen, like for the 80s setting and then the 60s settings, but then when we get to the 30s, it's a different ratio because they didn't have widescreen in 30s films.
My goodness, I did not notice that. Now I can't wait to watch it again just so I can see that.
Yeah, it's really cool, and I like that he did that. But you talk about the music. That this is a unique film for Anderson because this is well, no, I don't think there's any pop music in Isle of Dogs either. But at this point, I think this is the only film that his soundtrack didn't list any kind of popular music, and he's very famous for putting in like 60s British band music in his soundtracks. And it's just all score in this.
It's all score, and it's a good score too.
Yeah, Alexander Duplat, who is the composer, this is one of the 4 Academy Awards it won, was for best score.
Yeah, it's a good score. It's very appropriate for the time period. The music just complements the film so well and really kind of helps drive the feeling and the emotion and sometimes even the stakes of what's going on in any particular scene that's on display.
Well, yeah, when it wants to be kind of sad and melancholy, which there's always that underlying in an Anderson film, even though there's so much of that dry wit humor that you have to like kind of be paying attention to what the characters are saying, or you're going to miss something absolutely hilarious because it's just kind of thrown away in the dialogue. Where I think this one is a little more zany than some of his other films, but still that style of humor. But when like there's like, something scary going on or something thrilling, like the score picks up and makes it suspenseful, like we're watching a Hitchcock movie or something.
Right. Yes, and like you said, there are definitely some very goofy moments in this film. But nothing feels over the top. It all feels like it just all balances so well. And I know we'll probably talk about some of our favorite scenes later, but to drive your point home with the music kind of complementing the scene where they're going down the slope.
God, I love that scene. I love the setup to that scene where they get there and there's all these different monks and they're like, "Are you Gustav?" Like to where he's like, "Oh God," he gets mad.
Yeah, like by the time the 5th person, I'm just like, "Yes, of course I'm Gustav." Like what?
Like Anderson, for someone who doesn't really do like I wouldn't specify that he does genre. Like he mostly does what I would call like dramedies. They're like family.
Very much so.
They're family films about a group of people that are either blood related or have become in someone's chosen family. But he really puts up the stakes in this film of like making it suspenseful. Like that whole sequence, even though it's funny too, but it's also suspenseful. You're like, what's gonna happen? And of course, you got Willem Dafoe, and anytime you cast Willem Dafoe, he's gonna be terrifying and threatening.
Yes, no, you hardly see him as William DeFriend or Willem DeFriend. He's always Willem Dafoe. And yeah, that brings up a good point. And Wes Anderson is pretty famous for having usually just fantastic ensemble casts, and the Grand Budapest Hotel is no exception. You got Ralph Fiennes, Adrian Brody, Jeff Goldblum, Edward Norton, Bill Murray, Owen Wilson, and some kind of good upcomers. Saoirse, is that her name?
Saoirse Ronan, yeah.
Yeah. And then Tony Revolori, is that how you pronounce his last name?
I believe, and if I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is his first film, or at least his first film role of any significance.
Yeah, and he did a great job too.
And not only that, he's getting like top tier actors for small roles. Like you got Tom Wilkinson just to do like one scene, and then you got
same thing with Owen Wilson. It was just one quick scene. You saw Bill Murray for maybe 3 scenes.
Well, that's an Anderson trademark. He's been in every one of his films except his first film. He's gonna pop up somewhere, even if it's a really small role.
And he definitely has his kind of his mainstays, like the ones that kind of travel between films. You know how like some directors kind of find their actors that they prefer to work with. And this one, I think one of the biggest actors that's in here. He's not a huge actor, but he's kind of starting to get himself out there. Jason Schwartzman
Oh, yeah,
as
he's been in a
Monsieur.
lot of Anderson films, and
Yep.
he does what Jason Schwartzman does best, even though it's a small role for him. He does what you want him to do in that role, and he does it perfectly. But
Yes, he
I
does.
equate Anderson like a theater director. Like he has his troupe of actors. Like
Yes.
these are my people that I put in my movies, and this is the role I given them for this one.
And I think quite a few people that were in the Grand Budapest Hotel are also in the French Dispatch.
Yes, Murray, Adrian Brody. I'm pretty sure Leah Sadu, who plays Tilda Swinton's mate, like head maid, is in it.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Tilda Swinton is in the French Dispatch. I'm not sure. Owen Wilson's in it. I mean,
Yeah.
yes,
It's just,
there's a
yeah, there's just people who go. It's actually so funny. Owen Wilson, I can't remember. I think it might have been a Saturday Night Live skit. He did this one skit about, they were talking about Wes Anderson films and like, kind of spoofing it a little bit.
Is it if Wes Anderson had made a horror film?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so good. Oh, look, a communique.
Yeah.
Using words like precocious, two precocious children. It's yeah, it's fun to watch. It's very good.
So you mentioned him, and I can't imagine another actor playing this role. He is just so perfect in this, and that's Ray Fiennes as Gustav Graves.
Yes,
He's just so amazing,
he
and
is. Go ahead.
it's nice to see him not playing some sort of villainous role. Like I love that, and
Yeah, all you gotta do
he's
is add a nose on him, and he's all rainbows and sunshine.
well, have you seen Schindler's List? Because he could give Voldemort a run for his money in that
Oh,
film.
I have seen Schindler's List. It's been a very long time. I also know that Liam Neeson is in that film.
Yes.
Correct, Liam Neeson. Okay, yeah, and I guess, man, Ralph Fiennes. I guess I would not recognize him because I didn't come to know Ralph Fiennes until later in my life. Once I
Right. That
started
was
paying more attention to actors and what they're in and all that.
and that's a smaller role. It's a significant supporting part, but he's very menacing in it.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
tell
it's
you, who did a good job being menacing in this one was Adrian Brody as Dimitri. He
oh
just had
yeah.
like he had an air of sinisterness around him the entire time as soon as he's on screen, and he looked great. He just looked like a villain. He looked like one of those people who would be, would tie someone up, put them on railroad tracks, and be playing a piano next to them.
Yes, he very much looks like and there is a little bit of melodrama to this film, but yes, he does look like that kind of twirling mustache villain. And he's also like this self-entitled rich boy.
Yes, very much so. That's a weird family, man. It's a weird family. And of course, talking about sinister characters, Willem Dafoe, of course, brings his trademark, villainous side to this. Not that I haven't. I mean, Willem Dafoe has made other roles where he's not a bad guy, but when he does play a villain, he's very good at it.
Yes, he's terrifying without even having to say a word.
Yes, he is, and he had those all those rings on his four main fingers that it looked like pretty much they were brass knuckles without the bottom part.
And you talk about a sequence that worked really well with the score. Of course, the ski slope scene is amazing, but I also love the scene where Willem Dafoe is kind of stalking Jeff Goldblum's
Yes,
character.
That's the thing about this. So one crazy thing about the Grand Budapest Hotel, it could go from just kind of gentle, whimsical, light comedy to some pretty gruesome scenes. You know, and that one stalking, that slowly stalking Jeff Goldblum through that museum was, I think, one of the best sequences because, you know, it built tension. You know, Jeff Goldblum keeps checking behind him and eventually, like, you know, he thinks he's scot-free. He like opens the door and like looks out and then it slams behind him and slices his 4 fingers off.
Yes.
So it just, you know, it goes from like innocent to very dark very quickly, then back to innocent again. It's very it is polarizing in a way that works, and it's very difficult to do that, I think, because some films will try to balance comedy with horror or comedy with tragedy, and it doesn't always land. But with Wes Anderson and this, it was beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, he just was collecting his poor dead cat they already murdered earlier because he wouldn't give them what they wanted because he's providing the wishes of the deceased in their will because he's representing them.
That was such, I feel bad for laughing at that scene, but it was so good because, you know, Willem Dafoe's Joplin was just like there just petting the cat. And then once, you know, Adrian got up and ran in a huff, he just threw the cat out the window and then proceeded to walk behind him. And Jeff Goldblum's like, did he just throw my cat out the window? And then he goes and checks, and sure enough, there's a splattered cat remains, you know, 3 or 4 stories down. I'm like, oh no, I guess cats don't always land on their feet after all.
It's a thing that Wes Anderson's been criticized for because this is often a thing that happens is something tragic happens to an animal in one of his films.
Yeah. Look, I mean, a real animal wasn't killed. It's just,
yeah,
some people, but I can understand, I guess, to a degree that might be off-putting to some people. But, you know, it's all cinema magic. No cruelty is actually happening. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure throughout some film history, there has been maybe some cruelty to animals. But in this regard, it was just, you know, he was probably just thrown on a mattress, you know, because from the angle they shot it at, it was from
even
the side.
if it was the actual cat when they threw it, like
right,
yeah,
which I don't imagine it would. But yeah, anyway, so that was a very good scene. I really liked that scene. I really liked Jeff Goldblum's character because, you know, he kind of has his trademark quirkiness in most of his films. But in this one, I feel like he's a little bit more reserved, maybe subdued, but not in an off-putting way. He is very articulate. He's very well-spoken, which, you know, I think is a true testament to his acting chops because Jeff Goldblum is one of my favorite actors and just one of my favorite people in general. One thing I've loved on Disney Plus is The World According to Jeff Goldblum. And every single time you see him, he has basically the way he talks in most of his movies is just how he communicates. But in here, he's very like to the point, very articulate in what he's saying. And I think that was incredible.
Yeah, he's not doing a lot of those ums and ahs like the things Jeff Goldblum does, like when he's his Goldblum isms, as you want to call them, like the things when he's like trying to find, like it's like he's like trying to figure out the words he wants to say, even though that's just his acting style. Like he knows what he's gonna say, but yeah, he's playing a lawyer who's like very much to the point. You know, this is what I got to do. This is what's happening. But he also knows or suspects that Gustav's innocent. Like he doesn't buy that he murdered this lady.
Right. And you notice when they took the portrait of the boy in the apple, or the boy with the apple, that Serge put that confidential note inside the thing before he wrapped it. It's like he didn't even check for it. So like the proof of his innocence was there the entire time.
Yeah.
Or at least, well, maybe not the proof of his innocence, but the full testament and will of Madam D. What was her last name?
Yeah,
it's kind of complicated. Tilda Swinton's character.
Yes, who apparently spent 5 hours in makeup every day to look that old.
Yes, yes.
Because guess who originally was gonna play this, and it might scar your image of this woman.
Oh, do tell.
Though she was the original Mrs. Lovett on Broadway. Angela Lansbury was supposed to play this role.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
And she had to drop out because of a stage show of Driving Miss Daisy.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I remember when I heard about this movie coming out, and they were talking about people that were going to be in it. Because Johnny Depp was another rumored actor, though I don't know who he would have played. I heard people saying he would have played Gustav, but I don't really see. I see him more if he was going to play anybody, the Adrian Brody role.
I could have seen him doing that. I don't. Seeing Ralph Fiennes as Gustav, I don't want to see anybody else as him. He just did it.
Exactly.
He executed it perfectly.
Yeah, it's Madam D. Yeah,
Madam D. Okay.
that's all it says.
Yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah, and I just love Gustav as a person because you think, oh, he's this vain person who's all about society and manners and how you dress and how you look, which he is, but he is actually a very decent human being, even though he takes advantage of these poor old women, but they love it.
Yeah.
And hey, the dude likes the older women. No shame
Yeah.
there.
I like how he explained that to Zero when they were on the train. He was like, but she's 85. Like, oh, I've had older. And he's like, it's like steak. When you're young, you go for like the prime cuts, but like when you get older, you go for the less savory cuts because they've got more flavor. Or he explained it somehow. He just used a steak metaphor. So yeah, he knew who he was. And yeah, and I think one of the strongest aspects about this film, if not the strongest aspect, is the relationship that forms between Gustav and Zero.
Absolutely, because it's a friendship, it's a mentor-mentee, it's a little bit of a father-son relationship.
Oh, he's very protective of Zero. I mean, so protective that unfortunately ended up costing him his life, toward at the end of the film. But yeah, I love it. My favorite moment with them was when he had just got done escaping, and the other people that he escaped with from prison, went and basically abducted that taxi and then drove off into the night. And he asked Zero, where's the safe house? He's like, wasn't able to find one. And then he was supposed to bring something, and he didn't. And Gustav just, all the frustration of all the situation just, bled out of him, and he took it out on Zero. And he was like, why are you even here? Like the Grand Budapest Hotel was fine before you got there. It'd been fine if you had never shown up. And then, he told him like, the war brought me here because he was a refugee essentially. And how like, my father was killed, and then the whole rest of my family was killed by a firing squad. And then just you see, and I got to give it to Ralph Fiennes, probably the most sincere apology that's ever been given in a film. Like, you can see the contortion and the emotion in his face. And I actually got a little misty-eyed during it. And, then he said that, you're an incredible person. I'm very proud of you. And then, of course, you're my friend. And, Zero said, we're brothers. And then, they brought in each other for a hug. It was just a good resolution to the situation. And, and I love how Zero kind of picked up on Gustav's love of poetry, and talking about Agatha, his Zero's eventual love interest, how he was writing her poetry. And then the siren goes off because the prisoners had escaped. And she's like, I want to hear the rest of this, but right now we got to go. It was just a really touching moment between the two of them.
Yeah, it is. It's very touching because he takes it out because, he's been in prison. I don't know how long he's been in prison. And, he's a man of certain taste. He is put himself into rich society, even though he's not really in that world, but he very much wants to at least look the part, right?
Right.
And he didn't bring this perfume cologne and just berates him like anyone, you know, our first world problems, thinking
Yeah.
only of ourselves. And then when he hears like the sincere reason, he's like, "Oh man, I was just being a total dick to you, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry that like I have
But
no."
so many. I feel like even now, so few sincere apologies are given. It's like, it's given like, like a band-aid. Like,
Mhm.
it's not even like, you shot somebody and you're like, oh, I'm sorry. And you just put a band-aid over it. No, that wound needs to be addressed, and a bullet needs to be taken out. You probably need to see if there's damage. You need to stitch it up. Like, there's sometimes an empty apology doesn't make anything better. It just satiates the situation.
Yeah, and they form a bond, and I think that Gustav sees a little bit of himself in Zero because he talks about, yeah, I was the best lobby boy at the Budapest before he arrived.
Right. And then, but finally he said that Zero had surpassed him. And of course, Zero gave all credit to him. It's like, well, I had a good teacher. And it was like, yeah, you did. So,
Yeah, and I got misty-eyed near the end when it reveals, and I love that sequence. It's shot in black and white, right
oh,
before it
yes,
right before it
that is a visual
happens.
cue. That is a visual cue that I did pick up on. And just, more of a testament to just how protective he is, because I like how it's like, it's essentially almost the same event. They get stopped at the same place by another group of soldiers, but this time they're wearing darker colors.
Mhm, and they
And,
comment on that because early in the film, it's gray because this takes place in the early 30s, so this
yes,
isn't quite when the SS has, started occupying a lot of Europe. And I don't know how many years have passed by the time they get to that point, but they're wearing black, so it's like the death squad of the Nazi
right.
soldiers are stand-ins for the Nazi soldiers, so to speak, because I don't think they're wearing like an actual Nazi
Yeah,
uniform,
they're
but
well, and also their sigil, their pendants, I guess. It looks kind of like World War II Germanic propaganda. Like,
mhm.
you can look at it and be like, okay, that looks Germanic. But it wasn't the um swastika. That's what it's called, correct?
Yeah, it's
It
not the
wasn't the swastika.
swastika.
So yeah, and they are asking for travel papers, which is common for anyone riding trains going through checkpoints. And they see Zero and that he is not of white descent. And of course, they
Mhm.
start, trying to get his papers. And the one paper that he gave the first time they stopped at the transport, wasn't essential anymore, because basically Gustav had his actual one, the one that was given to him by Hinkles, Edward Norton's character, earlier in the film. And basically he just ripped it up because it was like, okay, yeah, that was the sign. It was like, we're under a new regiment now. And
Mhm.
then he threw it on the ground. It's like, you need to come outside now. And they basically, and he's like, you stay right there. And, Gustav says, like, if you harm this boy, I'll see to that you're disgraced and hanged. And then
Mhm.
they rifle butted Zero in the face. They were going to take him, and Gustav immediately jumped up and started wrestling with the soldiers, calling them insulting terms and all that. And then
Pretty sure he called them fascists.
yeah, fascist pigs or something like that. And then you found out that because of that, he was shot. And
Mhm.
it's a very tragic end. And this is kind of when I realized, when, because as you know, the story is being told from the point of view of an older Zero to a young writer who was just happening to be visiting the Grand Budapest Hotel in that time. and he told him the story of what happened about when this place was in its grand, when it was at its heights, its grandeur, um, and then you realize this is a very sad story by the end of it because Zero was completely alone.
Yeah,
He
not only does he lose his friend and mentor, but years later he loses his wife and child to an illness.
to an illness, and it was 2 years after Gustav had died. So, and you didn't get to see Agatha for long in the film, but because she came in a little bit later, but you can still tell the legitimate bond between her and Zero and
Yeah, and
how they were in love. And it just goes to show you, like, you don't have to necessarily have a huge drawn out ordeal to make it look like some couple are in love. I feel like films make that mistake so often. They do all these ridiculously big things to try to give the impression that these two are meant for each other, are meant to be in love, and it just feels forced, But then you see something as pure and innocent as what happens with Zero and Agatha, and how even though it was in the span of an hour and 40-minute film, only an hour and 40 minutes, and that's including credits, that it was organic. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like they were just, oh, here's a romantic element for the film. It felt natural. And that is a balance that I feel not every single director can achieve. So props to Wes for being able to do that so flawlessly.
Well, props to him for being able to direct that. Props for the editor being able to get those scenes and make it effective for what little scene time they have. Props to Saoirse Ronan and Tony Revolori for their chemistry and their skills as young actors. I think he was only 17 when they made this movie, and she's like 19 or 20.
Yeah.
So props to them that they're able
very
to
much
do that, because if you have not a skilled director and actor doing that, then this wouldn't be believable. And it's very sweet and touching. Like, it's as you said, it's innocent. It feels like an innocent first love, first crush. And she's like most Anderson characters, she's a little quirky, so it kind of
incredibly likable.
Yes.
And she's lovely. The actress is lovely. Saoirse, she's lovely. Like, and she had very striking eyes, and they just and they gave her that large birthmark on the side of her face, and and I love how, because society is often like, you have to be a certain way to be considered beautiful, and I like how in this instance, like, with a glaring mark, like basically a wine stain on this person's face, it's like, no, that screw traditional beauty. And you saw that she was beautiful because of who she was and not how she looked. And even with that, she still looked beautiful.
Yeah, you're a beautiful soul, beautiful person. And I think there's so many lovely people in this movie. And I love that, like, Zero tries to start modeling after Gustav by penciling in a mustache on his face.
I love that. I like how when he gets up in the morning to start, he like just goes to the mirror and draws a thin line, and it's terrible when he draws it. He's like, "Yep," and he goes and gives like a quick brush off of his clothes, and he just goes to work. He did perfect that mustache eventually.
I want to get back to the prison scene, because I love the prison design in this movie, and it makes me always want to go and watch Paddington 2 after watching this, because, like, I don't think the prison outfits are pink in the Grand Budapest Hotel, but since seeing Paddington 2, I feel like it could be the same prison almost.
I haven't seen Paddington 2 yet, but I've heard nothing but good things.
It's very lovely and charming. Both films are. You should watch them.
I will. But yes, there's a lot to say about this prison scene. Go ahead.
I love how ridiculous this prison break is. They have like this ladder, and then they're like literally jumping over guards' beds and crawling under them.
Yep. It's great. And then they get to a point where they get into the laundromat essentially, and they open that door, and then there's 5 guards below playing cards, and they all get, yeah. And one guy's like, well, I guess I got some work to do. And he just like jumps down into the hole with a knife and kills 4 of them and ends up killing the 5th one. But the 5th one also gets enough strikes on him to where he also dies. So but still just like, again, just going from the comedy of crawling under beds and like jumping and like climbing down, like where did they even hide the ladder? Like how did they get the materials to make this ladder? And
oh my goodness, Chris made it.
I made it. I just got in, guys. I'm filthy. I grabbed my beer on the way, and
nice.
I'm not gonna stay long because, man, I have not eaten today. I'm tired, but I was like, I've got to pop in and say hi at least.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, while we have you, tell us what you thought about the Grand Budapest Hotel.
Hang on.
Hey, bro, I feel that. When that first sip of beer hits your soul.
Dude, I've been wanting this since 12 o'clock today, which is not healthy, but
this isn't grand.
It's been that kind of a day. I made a lot of deliveries. But anyway.
This isn't movie related, but what beer are you drinking?
Voodoo Ranger Imperial IPA.
Yeah,
I'm a
New Belgium.
Ranger guy. I like it. They're pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a beer guy in general.
Sure.
I like to try all kinds and all different brands and companies, but I kind of latched on to Voodoo Ranger. I kind of like their taste.
Yeah,
so.
New Belgium's good.
But anyway, Grand Budapest. Now, it had been a while since I'd seen this, and Grand Budapest, right?
Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking.
Just double checking. A lot of things going in my brain today, but I absolutely loved it. And Life Aquatic used to be my favorite, but I think after rewatching this, it may have been dethroned and bumped to number 2 because
is it just how well made this movie is?
Yes, it's how well the movie is made. It's just the story in general. Like, I don't know, this one, like, they all stand out, but after rewatching it, this one was like kind of sad on another level, but like a good sad. Like, I don't know. It was great, and I absolutely loved it. And it's probably my number 1 movie of his now.
Well, let me get both of your guys' opinions, because this one is the one that got because Wes Anderson's always had his fanboys and girls, so to speak, people who are fans of his work, and there are critics that go to bat for Wes Anderson and talk about how great a lot of his films are. But this one got a lot of award recognition. 9 nominations, 4 wins: best score, best production design, best costume design, makeup and hairstyling. Do you think, because this movie has more of like a traditional movie plot, because it deals with a murder mystery and trying to clear Gustav Rayfine's trying to clear his name and innocence, and there's a love story, and it's kind of a suspense thriller, and there's no pop music, there's it's all score. Do you think people who are members of the cat are like, oh, he finally made a real movie?
Well, I think it's because it wasn't quirky like his other films. Well, okay, it's quirky, but not quirky in the way his other films are. Does that make sense? Like, we've all seen his movies, right? And they're all quirky in their own way, but you're right. This was more of a traditional movie than the others, and maybe that's why I don't know, maybe that's what stood out to me. I don't know what really stood out this time around, because I've seen it like 2 or 3 times already, but I don't know, it had been a little while, and I was like, I'm going to put everything aside, I'm going to make sure my phone's put down, and I'm really going to pay attention to this movie, and I want to watch the details and the acting, and I don't know, it popped. It really did this time around. And I think, like you said, Cody, it doesn't feel like a traditional Wes Anderson in a way. Like,
Well, I mean, there's lots of scenes that are like, especially the Lucas Hedges gas station scene where he's pumping Willem Dafoe's gas in his motorcycle and is like making weird small talk. And Willem Dafoe, I'm wondering if he's contemplating, I might murder you because you're getting on my nerves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, well, I think he said enough when he pulled open the button to like the little metal button part of his jacket and then put his flask back, and there's a piece right there, his hand iron.
Isn't that such a cool jacket though?
It's a very cool jacket.
I love that jacket.
The only
That's
jacket,
awesome. Any jacket that conceals a flask and a gun if you're into that kind of thing, but I'd much rather just have a flask than. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just like that. Just jacket just screamed, "That's an assassin," And that jacket is cool. The only coat in that film that beats that jacket is Adrian Brody's black jacket that he wore when he was chasing Agatha, trying to get his painting back. I love that black, just kind of trench coat. I forgot what the technical term is, but it's not solid going down. It's cut to where it kind of goes down the shape of the legs a little bit. It kind of what's the word? Flourishes better when you're running. It's a chase scene and all that.
Right.
And then I love when he tries to insult Gustav and is like throwing homophobic phrases at him, and then he was molesting and manipulating and abusing my mom. He's like, I thought I was gay. Well, you're bi sometimes.
You're bisexual, yeah. Yeah, that was I forgot about that too. That was jarring when I heard it. I was like, oh man, yep. I forgot about this. I mean, props to Adrian Brody for really selling it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, do we think Ray Fiennes Gustav also scored with Edward Norton's mom? Because he's like, how's your mother? She was a lovely lady.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of evidence to support that.
Yeah, I thought him being a gigolo was quite amusing. Or not really a gigolo. Well, I don't know, not really a gigolo, but
a gold digger.
Yeah, he's a gold digger.
A little bit of a gold digger. I mean, look, I'm sure a lot of it was out of the kindness of his heart, but and he's just liked older women and liked the attention that they gave him. But in the end, it won her all of Madame D's estate. So
he knew how to show a lady a good time.
Yes, he did. And from some scenes, it seemed like they knew how to show him a good time too. Again, so I was telling Cody this earlier, Chris. It had been a while since I've seen this film. I forgot how racy it was in some scenes. I was like, "Oh, that's okay."
Yeah, that caught me off guard. Like we always lock our door when we're watching a grown-up movie, as we call them, so our kids don't walk in. And I told Lindsay, I was like, "Nah, it's a Wes Anderson. It'll have language, but I don't think there's anything we need to worry about. Like the kids just walking in, it'll be dialogue. I don't think it's really going to show any. There's not anything really like that in the first couple of minutes of the movie. It has the scene. It's in the montage or whatever, and I was like, oh no, okay, maybe we should lock the door. I didn't remember that part.
Yeah, I didn't either. I also didn't remember. I didn't remember all the harsh language either. Which again, none of these things are off-putting to me. It's just I was like, oh, that's right, because I've seen the most recent film of Wes Anderson I've seen was Moonrise Kingdom. Working through his filmography, I saw Moonrise Kingdom, and really, you look at those two films; they're as different as night and day. You could tell they're Wes Anderson because there's just that trademark Wes Anderson quirkiness throughout. Just there's that. I can't explain it. It's there's a thread throughout every film of his that I've seen where it's this is definitely Wes Anderson. But yeah, tonally, these movies are between like Moonrise Kingdom and Grand Budapest Hotel are very different. Well, I would say that I think Moonrise Kingdom was what, PG?
Is PG-13.
PG-13, okay.
I mean,
Whereas,
there's a
Budapest
lot of
Hotel is
similarities. There's a romance. There's, father-son relationship. There's, Edward Norton trying to be in charge, but is not really in charge.
Jason Schwartzman was also in that film, wasn't
he? Yeah, playing a similar type of character.
Yep.
Kind of. Isn't he in all of his films?
He's one of his mainstays. We were talking about that earlier, too. That
Max Fisher's actually good at something and cares, whereas his characters in Moonrise Kingdom and Grand Budapest, I don't think actually care really about what they're doing. They're just kind of there and going to make the best of their situation.
Right.
Occupying space, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Jason Schwartzman is a very good concierge compared to Ralph Fiennes or Zero.
No.
I absolutely loved their brotherhood of concierge, I guess. What do they call them?
Oh yeah, that whole scene where they call Bill Murray and then he calls another hotel.
And they just it reminded me of the lighting of the beacons in Lord of the Rings.
Yes, Lord of the Rings, yes.
And it kind of goes down the line with all these people and they're helping, and I love that. That was
Fisher Stevens makes his bellboy or lobby boy do CPR and Bob Blanton
take over
tasting the soup.
That was easy. It was like too much salt.
Yeah.
What I forgot what I was gonna ask.
Well, we were talking about the prison scene, Chris, before you came in. And did you guys
y'all go ahead and continue with the prison scene? I'm gonna bow out, man. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm hungry. I got a shower. I'm gonna down this beer and probably hit the sack because I got to be back in Tyler tomorrow early for another day of it. So
goodness, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for dropping in, dude. It was good to see you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I'm sorry. I thought again, Cody was like, gave me the time, and I was like, oh yeah, because any other Friday, I'm home by at least 6:30, And I was like, yeah, that'll be fine. I've got this. I've never worked this late on a Friday. I know it's getting busy, but I got this.
Well, I was telling Cody, if there's ever, you guys are both friends with me on Facebook. If there's ever a time where you need to push the time back, just give me a heads up. Because normally we've been doing 10. And the only reason, admittedly, that I was going for earlier time tonight was because I was going to try to play some games online with some friends. But,
I totally get it, man. I miss video game time with friends. So you get that. That's important. I know a lot of people don't think so, but video game time with friends is important.
It is important, but I also
if you can't board game. If you can't board game in person, then you video game.
That's right.
In distance. So
that's right.
You keep that gaming culture alive, sir. Anyway, guys, thanks for letting me drop in. I'm sorry I made it. Cannot stay for the whole thing, but yeah, it was fun, and I will see y'all later. I'm looking forward to the next podcast. So
awesome. We'll see you next time, bud.
All right, guys. Out. Yes.
All right.
So apparently in that scene where Harvey Keitel slaps Zero, they did that 43 times, and Harvey Keitel slapped him every time they did it.
Wow.
And I'm sure he did not slap him gently at all, knowing the method of acting he is known for.
Yeah. And remind me again, which person is this?
That's the older bald guy of the prison group that he escapes with.
Oh, yes, that's right. He leaves and slaps him. Good luck, kid, or something like that. Best of luck, kid. Wow. Yeah, he did slap him. Sorry, I just watched that movie and I completely forgot about it. For a second, I thought you meant like when they rifle butted him in the face. I was like,
no,
man, surely not.
No, it was that. It was that scene.
Yeah,
and I love how Gustav, like, the prisoners, like that big guy who apparently they found at a brewery just drinking beer and cast him like he's like, I'm gonna help you guys by choking this guy that's trying to rat you out because you
the guy that's ratting you out.
you were nice to me.
Yeah, like you're, good on you. At least some of us are getting out.
And
yeah, that was fun. I love the scene where it was a minor scene, but when Gustav first got on his good graces, he was just pushing that cart around with what do you call it? Gruel, slop?
Yeah, it was gruel.
Some sort of mush. He's like, you want some of the mush? He's like, could use a little salt, and then he like slightly salted it and handed it to him. But everyone else is like, you want some mush? Suit yourself. Just kept pushing.
Particularly good today.
Yeah.
And then he has when Zero visits him, he's got a black eye, and he's like, what happened? He's like, you got to prove yourself in this place,
Yeah. Right off the bat, you got to let him know that you're tough, and like you should see him. Just always, always acting like he's in control of his environment.
Well, yeah, even when they're like going to Miss Madame D's estate, and he's like, she's mysteriously died. He's like, okay, here's what you need to do, and also get a bottle of that because we're not drinking that dreadful stuff that's on the train.
Yeah, it's good. Like, just the man knows his business and goes about his business frequently. So yes, I do. The whole prison sequence is very fun. The escape, of course, is excellent. And I tell you, once Agatha started playing her part in the escape, when she put the digging tools in her Mendel's bakes, which every single time I saw a baked good by Mendel's on screen, I wanted to eat it because it looked so good.
Yeah, and I think it's hilarious, like when the guard is going through like the stuff that's being sent, and he's like cutting it in half and stabbing it, but when it gets he's like, oh, I can't ruin this. It's art. I can't.
Right. And he's like, yeah, like everything else, like chop, chop, chop. Like, I get it because, people try to do that, but like bake, like, nah, send it on.
Yeah, like stabbing holes in the Swiss cheese that already
slicing the bread, slicing the sausage, like, yeah, just getting through everything. I mean, I get it. You can put picks and all that in there, so you gotta be careful so you don't want your prisoners escaping. Yeah, so I tell you, I'd like to get into favorite scenes from the film. One of my favorite scenes is when they get back to the Grand Budapest after going to Madame D's estate and taking the boy with the apple painting back and hiding it in a safe. And then one of the other workers of the hotel says, the police are here to see you. And like, there's that moment of hesitation where Zero and Gustav are looking at him. It's like, well, tell them I'll be right down. And then he goes there, and then they read off the charges to him. Like, I know what's going on. Someone murdered her, and you think I did it. And immediately turned around and started running.
I love it.
I love that too, because I did not see it coming. I was like, okay, there he goes. I don't know what he's hoping to accomplish with this, but they do end up catching him, and then he goes to prison.
And Zero runs with him.
Yeah. It's so funny. Another one of my favorite scenes is, and actually this is probably my ultimate favorite scene, is when Adrian Brody is chasing Agatha, but Agatha loses him. And so when they get to the Grand Budapest, and then Adrian spots Gustav and Zero, and he pulls out his gun and starts shooting. Well, all these military personnel have started coming into the hotel as well. So they all start coming out and they start shooting. And totally, before you know it, it's turned into a big shootout of like, no one knows who or why they're shooting at somebody, but they are. And then Edward Norton's Hickles comes up like, why? Why is everyone shooting at each other?
Who's shooting
stop.
at who?
Who's shooting at who? Stop. Yeah, I laughed so hard I had to pause it. It just again, just absurd situations come up in these films, and it's so good. So I think those are probably my two favorite funny scenes, or at least the scenes that I translated as funny. They were funny to me. The slope scene was also pretty good, where he was like, how can we stop? It's like, stop, I can barely steer this thing. And how when they were going down, it was like an Olympic trial, like an Olympic practice run, and how Willem Dafoe's was it Jopling, I think.
What is his name?
He
let's see here. Jopling, yes.
Jopling. So he was going around the different obstacles. Didn't have to, but he did it anyway, I guess to entertain himself. And when they finally get to the bottom of the hill, the sled crashes and Gustav's hanging over the edge, but Zero, he's just so buried in the snow that only his feet are up, like with like the barest bit of his ankle and shin showing. So that's hilarious too.
Yeah, and then Gustav's reaction, because he thinks he's about to be murdered by Willem Dafoe, and then Zero just pushes Willem Dafoe
him off the
cliff.
edge. I like how he was basically saying poetry. But he was saying a poetry about his current situation and his impending death. And then Zero just pushed him right off the edge. And of course, then Jopling plummeted to his death, which was well earned because he, killed more than a few people. And
including Jeff Goldblum, and I always forget that actor's name that played basically Madame D's.
Played Serge.
Yeah,
I think Serge was the character's name, and also killed Serge's sister, like beheaded her,
and then strangled Serge in a confessional booth.
Yeah, it was just like, man, this is not a nice man. And you look at him, and like they did a good job with like his outfit and his makeup, because he did look sinister. He looked like the perfect counterparts to Adrian Brody's Dimitri.
Yes, and what I heard was that this has happened a lot in Anderson's films when they're shooting, but they all stayed in the building, like the hotel they were using to shoot as the Grand Budapest. Like,
nice.
All the actors and crew and everybody, like they stayed in the hotel they were filming in.
That's perfect. I imagine there was a lot of fun off nights there with all the actors and all the crew.
I was listening to the commentary, and apparently Goldblum and Norton went to some restaurant together for dinner, and Anderson. So
that's awesome.
And like Jeff Goldblum and Willem Dafoe would be hanging out on set even when they weren't working.
Yeah.
Just to see what was
they're
going
kind of,
on.
They're kind of a little bit older, so they're a little bit more old guard than some of the other people in this film. So, yeah, and there's actually a special feature on my Blu-ray of Bill Murray actually gives a tour of the hotel. And I want to watch that special feature very badly. And I will probably do so sometime this weekend.
Well, and I love that he's the one that's like the guy, like I guess he's the head of the League of Concierge or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, what were they called? Like the Order of the Crossed Keys or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's what it's called when he calls them. And he even brings that cologne or perfume that he has to have or wears. We could only get the whatever ounce bottle.
Yeah, he's like, that's fine. And then I love it as if like solidifying Zero's position in Gustav's heart. As soon as he gave a couple spritzes on either side of his neck, he then handed it to Zero to do the same. It's like, now we are truly brothers. The cologne has bonded us. What do they call him? Like the most perfumed man that some people had ever met. Yeah, like he's a rather perfumed individual. Which I'm sure, aided him in his courting with these old widows.
Yeah. Well, he had a type, and they had to be old, rich, blonde, and insecure, because he was all those things as well.
Yes. It was great. I love how he also talked about the boy in the apple. It's like, that's me. like see the resemblance, and he like moves to where Zero can see him a little bit, like kind of like looking like the painting. And I could see it a little bit, but maybe not as much as Gustav was seeing it in himself.
And you know that had to be for comedy purposes, the portrait they put as replacement, because someone surely had to notice that before. You could have picked a much more subtler work of art to put up in replacement.
Right. Oh, it wasn't even the right frame shape, because you could see the line of dust from the original painting on there. He's like, what? Adrian Brody notices, like, what is this? And then he just takes and it's a rather vulgar picture by normal standards. And then he takes it off the mount, off the wall mount, and just like smashes it on top of like a statuette, like horse or whatever it is. It just destroys the painting, but because it's not Boy in the Apple. So, yeah.
I think the other thing I want to talk about, other than clearly the impeccable production design and how it looks, like how they get like the mechanics, like we're watching like how a machine works, especially with the ski lodge and the freight elevators and
the funicular.
Yeah, and all just the beautiful colors of matching. And apparently he gave
Yes.
all the cast and crew robes with the Grand Budapest sigil on it. Jeff Goldblum says he wears it every day.
That's awesome.
It's like pink and white.
It's very pretty. And the original colors of the Grand Budapest Hotel are very bright and vibrant. And pink, I wouldn't think that pink would be a good choice for a building, but looking at it for the Grand Budapest Hotel, it absolutely works.
I mean, that's something you always see in these Anderson films, is they're always very colorful and there's always very much of a matching sense. And there's always a tip of a hat of nostalgia for something from the past, even though this movie is set in the past. So it works even better for Anderson's style, because I think he likes things from a time before, which this
Right.
movie's all about. Even in the 60s, they're talking of a time before. The other trademark I see in this, and it's not so much because they are adults, but I feel like it's something that happens a lot of times in Anderson films, is the children are sometimes more mature than the adults.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Zero and Agatha are very much more mature individuals than a lot of these adults.
Oh, absolutely.
Or older adults, is like, especially Gustav and Adrian Brody's character, Dimitri,
Yeah.
these are like, they act like a little bit like childish man boys.
Yes. Well, what is it that Gustav said when he like learned all these things? Like, I've been dropped into a den of vipers. Basically talking about Madame D's family, and they were, all of them. Some of the people didn't even realize that she had died.
Or right, that one guy. Away. Why are we here?
Like, where's D? Is like, D passed away. That's why we're here. It's like, like, how clueless can you be? One interesting thing I'd like to bring up, and this may just be my speculation, but if you look at the location of the Grand Budapest Hotel and see all the bright, the very warm, inviting color of the hotel itself, and then all the really bright colors inside, if you travel to other parts of this film, they're all very gray, dreary, very sad. It's like it was supposed to be a juxtaposition, like the Grand Budapest Hotel was like a happy place. And then you go to all these other places and it's all sad. It's kind of like, okay, so like, in the movie Corpse Bride, when in life, it was all dreary and mute colors and all just dark and blah. But once they died, then that's when all the color came. I think that's kind of the way I look at it with the Grand Budapest Hotel. And if you notice, they showed it at different time periods. It's only pink in 1932 when the main crux of the story is taking place, and then it changes colors again in what is it, the 60s,
68, I believe, when
68,
it's
and then I
Jude
think finally
Law.
83 or it's 80 something, 87 maybe,
85, I believe.
85. So, and you look at the colors on them, and they're not, they're dreary, because I think that the Grand Budapest Hotel was at its best when Gustav was there. So it's kind of like once Gustav died, the light that was the Grand Budapest Hotel died with him. That's kind of like, I may be looking too deeply into it, but I like to look for metaphor a lot in films, and that's just kind of how I translate that.
Well, it's a very interesting theory, and it also reminds me of Gustav kind of questioning this, this new regime of the military, and he's like, I don't like these gray uniforms, very ghastly and dull.
Yeah.
Like, he's criticizing their fashion sense.
Right. And then they come aboard the train, and it's like, oh, we were just talking about you chaps. And then they went from gray to black. And
which I think is the transition of like the power they have and how much like control they have over the government.
Right.
It was very much as a backdrop of, the Nazi occupation that would become of Europe in the 1930s and 40s.
Yes.
I mean, this movie is very heavily influenced by European cinema and European literature. I forget the author's name that they're a fan of, that the Tom Wilkinson and Jude Law are supposed to kind of play a fictional version of this writer that they were inspired by for this story.
Right. Yeah, that was something that was said at the very end of the film, is based on the works of, I think it was an Italian name, I want to say.
It's like Stefan or something like that.
Yeah. Do we want to look it up?
Yeah, I'm gonna look it
up. Looks like that's what you're doing right now.
Since we mentioned it, let me see.
Yeah. For the viewer's sake.
Let's see here. Yeah, there's probably somebody that like knows it, and it's like, oh, Stefan, and forgive me, is an Austrian novelist, Stefan Zweig. I might be butchering that last name, but that is the author that they're kind of this is inspired by, and who Wilkinson and Law are kind of playing a version of.
Right.
And then you also get he gets F. Murray Abraham in here to just play exposition of retelling the story to the novelist, which is very much a Wes Anderson thing, as we open a book like we're reading a book or a story. But it's like Wilkinson is telling us this story, but then we got to go back to where he got the story from, and now F. Murray Abraham is telling his story to the writer who will eventually make it a work of fiction.
Right. Yeah, and I tell you what, man, he brings the emotion more than once in the scenes he's in. When he starts to talk about Agatha, you just see those genuine tears coming down his face. And he said, I don't like to talk about her because it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's understandable, seeing that relationship develop between Zero and Agatha, and knowing that a disease took her 2 years later, that he said, now we could cure it in a week. But back then there was no cure for it. And to live long enough to see a cure come out for something that took the last of your connection to happiness, it was very sad. Like I said, this film had a sadness to it.
Well, I mean, think of I'm not sure how old your grandparents are, if they're still of the living. But I know for my grandparents' generation, they grew up in a time where polio was something that ended your life, and then by the time they have children, it's curable.
Right.
Like that is probably the most recent thing I can think of And there's probably not a lot of people left alive, except for people who were maybe children when the vaccination was being made, that
Right.
remember like that being a disease. So yeah, that's kind of where I feel like that terms is coming from. It's probably not as severe as that, but something. But yeah, it's wild to have lived in a timeline when people that died, and now if someone got it, well, they'll be better in a week with some medication.
Right.
Yeah, this is a impeccably made, wonderfully film. It's hilarious, it's touching, it's sweet, it's sad, it's suspenseful. Is there Before we get to our rankings of this movie, is there anything else you want to talk about?
One interesting thing I noticed, and I don't, it would become more relevant later in the film, but in the very beginning, it shows that young woman walking up to what was essentially kind of like a memorial for the author,
Mm-hmm.
and she put a set of keys on it because that's how people were paying their respect to him. And if you notice, there's actually several scenes where keys are very prominent, like they're on display, especially the hotels and all that. So there's this underlying thing of keys throughout it. And then you realize that the whole reason I realized then the whole reason Gustav was able to get out of this was because he got help from the Order of the Cross Keys
Mm-hmm.
and all that. And I thought that was a really cool thing because, that author wrote the story that an older Zero told him. So now all these generations later are reading about it and they understand the importance. And I think that's a really cool way to pay homage to something, but like also to do something at the very beginning of film where you're like, why are there so many sets of keys on this thing? Like what's going on? Like, and then you're like, oh, it's like it sets a mystery up right away, and it gives you such a delightful payoff when you
Mm-hmm.
realize what the significance of it is, which just further credits Wes Anderson's creative direction. And I keep saying Wes Anderson, and Wes Anderson is a great he is a great director, but like I also know it takes a village. I mean, I know there's there's
Mm-hmm.
editors, there's story writers, there's screenplay. My goodness, screenplay. I
Well,
don't feel like
he did
screenplay is talked
script
enough.
this too,
He
but I
did.
mean,
Oh my goodness, yeah,
him and
that sounds
Roman
about right.
Coppola wrote the film. Yeah, Wes Anderson usually writes. He usually has a collaborator on the screenplay, but yes, he usually writes his own screenplays.
That's awesome. So, but I guess I want to give credit to his entire crew for producing this wonderful film that is just touched my heart. It touched it all over again today whenever I watched it. And I look forward to watching it many times more.
Anything else before we rank it and some
Before we
final
rank this bad
questions?
boy,
Yeah.
I think that pretty much covers everything I'd want to talk about.
I mean, we've talked about most of the movie. We talked about most of the significant scenes and lines, and most of the performances, or at least the main performances. I mean, there's a league of actors we didn't mention that have small roles in here that just bring nice touches to the scenery or to the characters and bring something. And even if you don't know the actor's name, you've probably seen them in another Wes Anderson movie before. That's just that Wes Anderson touch.
Right.
So just like Del Toro and James Cameron, we've come up with a particular ranking fitting for the director themselves. So because Anderson is such a symmetrical person, things have to match and look a certain way.
Yes.
If you love this movie, and because he has such a bevy of actors and everyone's usually a snazzy dresser, if you love this movie, you think it's you hit the ball out of the park. It's a great film. We call it a great ensemble.
Okay.
If you enjoy it, you find it entertaining because of how he loves to costume design things. We call it a nice attire. Of course, if it's a little more obscure, it's only for fans, cinephiles only, a deep dive. If it's mediocre, doesn't quite hit up to snuff, style over story, style over substance, whatever you want to call it. And then no matter what, even if you don't like Wes Anderson movies or you just think it's terrible, it's a complete failure, it's usually going to be a very pretty movie. So we call it a beautiful failure.
All right. Well, as per usual, I'll probably go and give it the highest ranking of great ensemble for all the reasons that we've been talking about for the last hour, between the cast and the crew and the cinematography, the music. This film grips you from the very beginning with that scene I was just talking about of placing the keys on this memorial, and it doesn't let you go. There's hardly a moment where nothing of or something of significance isn't happening in this film. And it's a film, it doesn't hold your hand, but it holds your heart. And because of that, I 100% give this a great ensemble, because it 100% was.
I'm going to agree with you. This is a great ensemble. I'm glad that he finally got the recognition from not just critics and audiences, because this is, I think, his most financially successful film, too. Besides being one of his most critically appraised films, it's also did well financially. So people went and saw this movie. I think this is him at the top of his game from the storytelling standpoint, from a technical standpoint. Like, everything is like top notch here. And I don't know if he's going to make a movie quite this good again, but he might have another masterpiece in his pocket somewhere. But I think, even though this is not my personal favorite film of his, I think this might be his masterpiece as of right now. If you had to put one in the books, I would say this is probably the one.
Yeah. It's good. I definitely look forward to just diving deeper into his filmography, and look forward to having casual conversations with you guys sometime about it.
I recommend going back and watching all of them. I mean, I think you will like all of them. You may not love all of them because of personal taste and how you're feeling and what maybe the movie's about, but I think you're going to get some sort of enjoyment out of each and every one of them because of that unique Wes Anderson flavor that's in every one of those movies.
Right.
So I think I don't think we talked about it recording, but were you looking forward to The French Dispatch? I know it wasn't playing really anywhere around us.
I was very excited to see The French Dispatch. After seeing the trailer for it, I could tell, just from the trailer, that it was a Wes Anderson film. And I wanted to see it very badly because, it's been a while since we've had a new Wes Anderson film. I think Grand Budapest Hotel was his last one before this one, right?
Isle of Dogs came out
Isle
in
of Dogs.
2018.
That's right. And I haven't seen Isle of Dogs yet, but you informed me where I can see that, and I will be hopefully watching that in the coming days. So, oh my gosh, I had a complete brain fart.
I think it's going to be out digitally in a week or two, and then it's going to be out on DVD, Blu-ray by the end of the month.
Sorry. Yes. Okay. Now I remember where we were talking about. Yes. So it did not come to my city. I was very distraught. The closest place for me was Dallas. I think you had said something about the only place for you guys was Lufkin. And
Kilgore, actually.
Oh, Kilgore. Sorry. Really?
Yeah. For some reason, Kilgore will get some of these more arty independent films, I guess because of the Shakespeare Festival that goes there every year.
Probably. And I was surprised because I figured at least some of the theaters here would have gotten it, but no, we did not get The French Dispatch, and I was very disappointed. So
yeah, I figured one of the big three theaters would have gotten it because I've seen Wes Anderson films in Tyler before in the theaters, so it's kind of weird.
I saw the Grand Budapest Hotel, but of course that's when I was living in Austin too. So
I saw
I
that one in
think
Lufkin,
when did
2014.
20? Yep, I was still in Austin. I didn't move back to Tyler until 2016.
Yeah, but I saw
So yeah,
Isle of Dogs in Tyler as well. I don't
nice.
know. Maybe they thought they could market that one to children, even
No,
though it's
I'm
not.
pretty sure Isle of Dogs came to the theaters. Yeah,
It
you're
did.
right.
I saw
It came
it.
to theaters. Yeah. So why didn't it get the French Dispatch? I have no idea.
Yeah,
It's not like
very
there's
weird.
yeah, it's not like there's a lot of movies coming out. I think what it is they're keeping some of the bigger, more popular movies in, because people are still kind of gun shy going to the theaters with COVID going on.
we have another variant.
Yep.
So I mean, like, I think people are going back to the theaters, but it's kind of the same situation even before COVID. People are only like, well, I'm only going to spend my money on like the big movie, like that I feel like I got to go see in the theater.
Right.
And I think
And
even people that want to go to the theaters and see a Wes Anderson movie, they're probably like, nah, I can wait till I can rent it or watch it streaming. Like, I don't have to see that one in the theater. Is probably people's thought process. And probably the theaters are like, I don't know how many people I'm going to get, like 5 dudes that look like me to go see it. That's who's going to be in the theater.
Like these guys look like they're art house attendees. Yeah. So it is regrettable, but we will get a means to see it, whether it's via streaming or getting a physical copy. So I was dismayed because while I do like going and seeing, the big Marvel movies or Star Wars films, I also like seeing the smaller, more quirky films like Wes Anderson's films. I just love going to the cinema.
And just because a movie doesn't cost $100 million to make doesn't mean it's not worth seeing on the big screen. Like,
absolutely.
Like, I think the Grand Budapest Hotel, it looked great on the big screen. Like, it's top-notch filmmaking with great cinematographer Robert Yemen, so it's going to look amazing. So he has this movie out. It's kind of gotten mostly good reviews. There's some people who are just like, well, he's just doing his shtick and he's just doing hobby projects. But, like I said, people either like him or they don't like him. He's that kind of person. Like, you're either on his wavelength or you're just like, I don't get all this quirkiness and weird off-cut humor and why does everything have to match? Like, if you don't, if that infuriates you, you're probably not gonna like any of his movies. But he's already shot another movie, and it's gonna have Tom Hanks in it.
Oh, that's great!
It's called Asteroid City, and it's got a lot of the similar actors he's worked with before, but also Tom Hanks and Margot Robbie.
That excites me because Tom Hanks is probably my favorite actor, so I'm very excited to see what the two of them together will accomplish.
And then my final question is, this was up for Best Picture and Best Director. I don't know if you saw the film that actually did win Best Picture that year.
2014.
Yeah, the movie was Birdman. That's what won Best Picture.
Michael Keaton. Okay.
Yes.
I haven't seen it yet, but I heard it was good.
It's a very good movie. Have you ever done theater or at least know theater people?
So I have several theater friends, and my only exposure to theater is I took a theater performance class when I was in college as an elective.
Right. So the movie is very much about stage and putting on a play and stage acting, and Michael Keaton plays this actor who was famous for playing a superhero in his prime when he was a younger actor, and now he's kind of a obscure out of work actor, and he's directing himself in a stage play to kind of like rebrand himself as a serious actor.
Yeah.
And it's like all the drama going on between that. Like Edward Norton shows up to replace an actor who's playing a famous like control freak and method actor, kind of playing a version of himself.
Yeah.
And the big thing about the movie was like the cinematography. They set it up to make it look like it was one continuous shot instead of like breaks. Even though there are breaks, they did not shoot the movie in order and all that, but they make it look like the camera is just following
The way
the whole
they
time.
edited it together. Okay, that's interesting. I'll
Yeah.
have to add that to my list.
And that was the big deal. And then the other movie that a lot of people were like, no, this one should have won Best Picture and Best Director was Richard Linklater's Boyhood, which was a project he did where he got together with these actors every year and would shoot a scene, and he basically filmed this kid from the age of like 7 or 8 to 18
Yeah.
in
So
a
it's a
10-year
project,
times.
right? So it's a project he's been working on for a while, and this is also a film that's been on my radar, but I have not yet viewed it. But I've heard great things about it as well.
Okay. So in your mind, you're like, Grand Budapest Hotel should have won Best Picture.
Yeah, basically, I think so, because I can't attest to the other two films, but I know Grand Budapest was great. So
Yeah. And I would have not been mad had Budapest won, but sadly it did not. It went to Birdman, which is a very good movie. So
in your personal opinion, do you think it's better than Birdman?
this movie, I enjoy it more than Birdman. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to watch Grand Budapest Hotel more than Birdman, but you know, there's always that argument of best versus favorite, and does that necessarily
Right.
mean it was the best movie? But you know, other people are like, but if I don't want to rewatch it, why would I say it's the best? Because I want rewatch. You know, it
Yeah,
depends
you
on the
want
viewer.
rewatchability. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm trying to pull up what else was nominated. See if you had seen some of these movies from that year. So apologies. I was just trying to
you're
pull it
fine.
up. American Sniper was nominated.
Okay.
The Imitation Game was another one.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that was 2014. That's one with Benedict Cumberbatch, right?
You're right. It's about the guy that created the basically the computer,
Yeah.
kind of to help win the war with the codes and stuff. So, and then pulling it up right now.
Okay.
Because this is after the whole Dark Knight scenario, they increased the number of films they nominated because it used to be 5, then they went to 10, and then for a long time it was like anywhere from 5 to 10, and now it's going to be 10 again. So I think this is a year there was only 8 nominees instead of like usually they were doing like 9. So okay, Birdman, American Sniper, Boyhood, The Grand Budapest Hotel, The Imitation Game, Selma, which was the Martin Luther King movie, Theory of Everything, which was about Stephen Hawking.
Yep.
And then Whiplash.
Well, Cody, of those 8 nominations, I have seen precisely one of those films.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I feel like I don't have anything to add to this segment.
No, that's fine.
These are all
that's
films
fine.
I've wanted to see, but I just haven't
well,
yet.
Of those 8 films, I would recommend Boyhood and Whiplash.
Okay.
Those would be my 2 recommendations. But if you're a big Michael Keaton fan and you like the concept of Birdman, then I would definitely watch Birdman.
I mean, I like Michael Keaton. He's not a make or break for me though. So he's definitely. I mean, I enjoy him, but also, yeah. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I just wanted to see because Anderson is not particularly a director who gets like these kind of accolades. So it's kind of interesting that this was the movie that he kind of got them, but didn't quite get the prize.
Well, we'll see how the French Dispatch does this year.
I don't I will be shocked. I don't think it's going to get any big nominations. It might get some smaller ones, but not. I don't think it's going to get Best Picture, Best Director
Yeah.
noms. Maybe screenplay, but we'll see. I suspect that Spielberg might get in though.
Yeah. Well, we got West Side Story about the. Well, actually, I think it's out now.
Yeah, it
started
came
this
out
weekend.
this weekend.
It's probably started today, if not maybe yesterday.
Yes.
So yeah, that's one that I've been excited to see as well. Is it gonna be a musical?
Yeah, it's a musical, just
Okay,
like the
because
original.
it felt okay. See, I've never seen. Well, have I seen the original West Side Story? I might have. Anyway, I love musicals, so it's not a problem for me. It's just certain scenes of the movie. I was like, well, it looks like it's going to be a musical, but maybe it's not going to be a musical. But wasn't the original a musical?
Yes,
So
and then it was
yeah, all
a
these
very
questions have been swimming through my head. So yes, I'm good. I plan on seeing it for sure.
and it was a very famous Broadway musical before it was a movie. So
Oh, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. I suspect that he's going to be nominated.
Yeah,
But thank you for coming on the show again.
of
Again,
course.
you're welcome anytime. You know, whatever directors we're doing, if you want to do them, let me know. And you're always welcome. And even if we're not doing a director series, if you just want to come on and talk a specific movie, yeah, you're always welcome.
I appreciate it.
Do you want to plug your show or
Yeah,
plug
I'll
any
go and
social
yeah,
media
I'll go
you
and
got?
plug. Yeah, I'll go on plugins. So again, thank you for having me. My name is Aaron, and if you have enjoyed my contribution to this, I would recommend my podcast that I do with a couple of friends from Austin. It's called Banter Banter. We release the first and third Mondays of every month, and it's just kind of a easy listening Monday morning show. It really it's hard to define because the genre is all over the place. You know, we could in one episode we could talk about the toxicity of nerd culture, and then in the next episode we talk about you know the problem with like big corporations. It's just that there's no clear definition of it. But yeah, so you can find us on most any podcasting platform. Again, it's called Banter Banter. If you want to follow that on Twitter, you can follow it at banter_cast, or you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at 8-Bit Wizard. The 8 is Roman numerical. And if you want to follow us on Facebook, you can look up Banter Banter Cast. So yeah, I'd love for you guys to come have a listen.
Yes, thank you again, Aaron, for coming on the show. It's always a fun conversation when you're on, and I enjoy it. So you're
I
welcome
enjoy
back
you guys as
anytime.
well. Thank you. I look forward to collaborating with you guys again soon.
We're not going to be doing any more main episodes the rest of the year. We'll be back in January to wrap up our remaining Anderson and Del Toro films. We have 1 Anderson film left, 2 Del Toro films left, and then we will squeeze in a Nightmare Alley and French Dispatch episode when we get around to seeing those films. I'm very excited about Nightmare Alley.
I'm very excited to watch both of those.
Yes. And then we'll have our 1 Christmas action film late night show. We got 1 more episode of that on Wednesday night, First Blood and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Nice.
And then, yeah, we won't be doing anything else till the new year. And Aaron, if I don't talk to you before then, I want to wish you a happy and safe holiday season.
You as well, sir.
Thank you. And thank you again for coming on the show. And you enjoy the rest of your weekend and have fun playing whatever video game you're going to be playing tonight.
I will. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.